Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Remy, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This afternoon, Council is grateful to have Pastor Michael Young of City of Grace to pray with us. Pastor, welcome back to Council.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. Let us pray. Father, we come before your presence tonight, God, and we give you thanks for who you are and what you do. You're good, you're kind, you're gracious, you're loving, you're patient, and you're merciful towards us. And for all of these things, we give you thanks. Father, we don't just give you thanks for that tonight, God, but we give you thanks for these men and these women and the positions and the platforms that you've given to them, Lord God. Father, we pray tonight that you endow them with supernatural wisdom as they seek, Lord God, the peace and the prosperity of our great city. Father, we pray, Lord God, that you allow them to have profitable discourse, God. I pray that you allow them, Father, to think through, God, the challenges, God, the opportunities, Father, that lay before us. Father, we pray that great grace would be their portion. We pray that favor would fall upon this city like never before. Father, despite, Lord God, what we sometimes see on the news, Father, we believe that our best days, they're not behind us, but our best days are in front of us. And Father, our ladder is going to be greater than our past. Father, we thank you for this city. We thank you for what you're doing. We thank you for what you're going to do. And Father, we ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor Remy, President Harden. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of City Council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor Remy, President Harden.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal was approved. This week's communication received by the City Clerk's office are listed on the agenda and will be published in the City Bulletin. Are there any other communications to be read in the record?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Go around the dais for any resolutions or announcements, starting with Councilmember Bangston. Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. Councilmember Brown.
Yes, sir. I would like to ask Deputy Director Highland to make sure everyone's aware of this upcoming weekend's activities.
What's this?
Thank you, Councilmember Brown and members of council. I want to invite everybody to come out to the Jazz and Rib Fest. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. It's a great time to get outside and have some good food and good music. Thank you.
Not necessarily in that order. Thank you, Council President. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember. Press Pro Tem.
Thank you, Council President. I do have a resolution tonight. I want to invite a couple guests to the podium. Dorsey Hager, the Executive Secretary at the Columbus Building Trades, and Neil Ambergy, the Business Manager of Ironworkers Local 172, to the podium. Now, we did a little bit of trickery here tonight. Neil thinks he's here for a resolution celebrating the 62nd anniversary of the Central Ohio Building and Construction Trades Council, but he's a smart guy, so he's probably figured out what's happening by now. This is Resolution 0137X-2023 to honor the retirement and celebrate the career of Ben Neil Ambergy Jr. This council recognizes Neil Ambergy Jr. for his outstanding service to his community by giving his skill, energy, time, and commitment toward the betterment of the city of Columbus, local union workers, and the city's construction industry. Neil's been a member of Ironworkers 172 for over 40 years, serving 9 in elected union office and 8 as business manager. And he's a proud second-generation ironworker. And he's got one hell of a story about the first time that he went out with his, well, one of the first times he went out with his dad on a job site where he was actually, what floor were you on in the Neil, or on the Rhodes Tower?
I'd say 10 or 12.
10 or 12? How old were you?
I was probably 10 or 12.
Neil has served as a trustee of Local 172, uplifting voices and interests of craftsmen and women in the Columbus region throughout his career. He was instrumental in the creation and expansion of the Building Futures Apprenticeship Readiness Program at the Ironworkers Training Center, which has helped hundreds that have not had past experience in the construction trades find a well-paying and meaningful career in the trades, many of which are women and people of color who have not had the opportunity that someone like Neil had, who is a multi-generational member in the building trades. As a representative on the executive board of the Columbus Building Trades Council, Neil's advocacy and leadership help promote healthy labor management relations between employers and employees in the construction industry. He also served as a representative on the executive boards of the Ohio State Building and Construction Trades Council, affiliated Construction Trades of Ohio Foundation, where he helped advocate for fair wages, workforce training, industry regulations, and safety standards. Neil's leadership in the Central labor community is going to be greatly missed, as he's been a fierce advocate not only for his members, but for all workers in Central Ohio. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Council of the City of Columbus that we honor and recognize Neil Ambergy Jr. for his lasting contributions to the City of Columbus and the union construction industry. And thank you, Neil, for everything that you've done for workers here in Central Ohio. Thank you for being my friend, Dorsey's friend to so many people. And there are literally hundreds, if not thousands of people, families in Central Ohio who have a better life because of you and Ironworkers Local 72 making sure that folks had the ability to make this a career. And we always like to talk about jobs around here, but what you all do is a career. Would you give folks workforce training, make them experts in their field, give them access to not only a good wage, but just as importantly, good retirement and health benefits. Things that you are now about to be able to enjoy on your own as a retired member of Ironworkers 172. I just want to thank you for everything you've done for all those countless families across Central Ohio that, again, have a better life because of your leadership and the local union making sure that that all happened. So congratulations. I hate to lose you. I think I speak for multiple of the folks on this stage about the disappointment of you leaving your role, but certainly it is a well-deserved retirement. So congratulations. And Dorsey, Neil, I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to make, but certainly want to hear from the man of the hour.
I'd just like to thank the council for recognizing me for what I consider just doing my job. And it's been an honor for the last decade to be able to give back a little bit to the organization that gave so much to me. And to be a part of a community that believes in the same thing that we believe in organized labor. You know, we just want everybody to have an opportunity to earn a fair living wage, have health insurance for them and their families, and be able to retire with dignity. And you know, I'm not going to sell out and move to Southern California, but I'll probably get on a plane and go visit.
Dorsey?
I just wanted to reiterate what Neil said. You said it in your remarks very well, Councilman Dorns. When we first founded Building Futures in 2017, Neil was one of the first people that really grabbed the reins, and kind of ran with it and really got the iron workers involved. They've hosted at their new training center several cohorts. They've taken many kids out of the program, not just women and people of color, but people who were just as involved that maybe hadn't got another chance at a career, or a path to the middle class. Neil's been an incredible advocate for all those folks through his training program, his union. Many have graduated from his apprenticeship program through Building Futures and are now out there running work, making good incomes, providing for their family. And one of them is one of our instructors, who's one of Neil's members, Charles Straley, who wanted to be here tonight, but is actually out of town getting continuing education so he can uplift his career more to continue helping teach the Building Futures program. And I'll leave you all with one last thing. I was talking to one of the IBW guys the other day, and they said, what's Neil going to do after he retires? And I said, well, he said he's going to take a family trip to Hawaii. And they said, well, you know what they say, here today, gone to Maui. So I hope Neil enjoys his retirement.
Any comments from any of my colleagues? Councilmember Remy?
Congratulations, Neil. Always enjoyed our conversations. I'm going to miss you around town, but I'm sure we'll see you here and there, hopefully. And just wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will say, so the First Lady was here, last week in these chambers talking about workforce development, and one of the things she talked about and folks talked about was the expansion of the training center. Right, which we're pretty close on. we got some things we got to do internally at the city to make happen. But that's one hell of a legacy that you're leaving to make sure that when the First Lady of the United States of America is talking about what the building trades unions are doing here in Central Valley to prepare for all of the development that's happening here, not only the lives you've touched already in your career, but that's going to go on for generations and generations afterwards. So just thank you and congratulations, and enjoy that trip. But we'll keep you around. And with that, I want to move for adoption.
Second. Bangston, Burrow City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Hey, Council President, that's all I have now.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Favor. Councilmember Remy.
Thank you, Council President. Tomorrow, Tuesday, July 18th at 4 p.m. in Council Chambers, I will host a Safety Committee public hearing over Columbus's Community Noise Code. We will be reviewing a first draft of code amendments for feedback from residents and stakeholders. This is part one of what I expect to be many discussions and draft amendments around the noise code, focusing on how we can improve our policies for residents. If you would like to sign up or speak or submit written testimony, please send that to my legislative assistant, Kaylin Pittman, at cdpittman, with 2 T's, that's cdpittman, at columbus.gov by noon tomorrow. That's all I have this evening. Thank you very much, Council President.
Thank you, council members. Are there any comments by our elected officials? Auditor, City Attorney's Office, Treasurer? Seeing none, at this time I request the following ordinance be removed from the consent action portion of the agenda. From the Economic Development Committee, Ordinance 1818-2023 and Ordinance 1822-2023. Are there any other ordinance to be removed by consent? Seeing none, may we now have a motion to waive reading of the titles of 30-day legislation by the City Clerk? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Burrow City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will the clerk now read into the record the ordinance number of 30-day legislation on tonight's agenda for first reading?
Resolution 134X-2023, ordinances 1646, 1647, 1654, 1660, 1896, 1907, 1988, 2000, 2001, 2014, 2135, 2137-2023. That was in the Economic Development Committee. Small and Minority Business Committee, ordinances 2022-2023. Public Service and Transportation Committee, ordinances 1962, 1969, 1987, 2019, 2027, 2064-2023. Recreation and Parks Committee, ordinances 1739, 1808, 2023. Public Utilities Committee, ordinances 1742, 1768, 1782, 1803, 1816, 1823, 1876, 1885, 1912, 1925, 1932, 1934, 1937, 1942, 1949-2023. Building and Zoning Policy Committee, ordinance 2007-2023. Housing Committee, ordinance 2094-2023. Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee, ordinance 1905-2023. Health and Human Services Committee, ordinance 2062-2023. Finance Committee, ordinance 2154-2023. Rules and Reference Committee, Ordinance 1984-2023. Zoning Committee, Ordinances 1784, 1785, 1897, and 2085-2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have several speakers on the first reading portion of the agenda. Just a reminder that we allow three speakers in favor and 3 against per each piece of legislation. And I'm going to stick with that today, mainly because specifically for first reading, just as a reminder, this is the first time we're reading it, so there's another opportunity next week or whenever it is scheduled to come back up for the residents to engage. So on one piece of legislation, there are 4 speakers. I'm going to call the first 3 up on those pieces. So the first person to speak before council is Stephen Goldmeyer, speaking against ordinance 1784-2023 in zoning. Stephen, welcome to council.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Can I get started?
Yeah, just a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and if you state your name and if you represent a new organization, but welcome to council, sir.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Good to be here. Good evening. I'm Stephen Goldmeyer. I'm going to read from my phone so I
Sure.
don't miss anything. I'm a lawyer and tech professional currently living within the boundaries of the University Area Commission, a few blocks north of the proposed development that this council is considering for rezoning under the ordinance that I'm speaking about. I'm speaking against the rezoning. I was born in Columbus, and I've lived in the city for over 30 years. And during that time, like many people in Columbus, I've had to move around the city to stay ahead of rent increases. Like so many people, it's becoming harder and harder for me to stay in the city I've nearly always called my home. Affordable housing is always on my mind. It's something I stress about, and I worry about a good portion of my time. And this council has also talked a lot about affordable housing, luckily. It's worth thinking through how this council's stated values and goals square with the proposed development that's at issue under the ordinance that I'm here about. At the release of the new housing strategy in March, council members expressed hope that the strategy would mean fewer evictions, more affordable rents, and an end to landlords taking advantage of tenants. Blackstone, the company that owns ACC, who's asking for this rezoning, Blackstone has been recognized internationally by the UN Working Group on Business and Human Rights as using, quote, aggressive evictions to make money. They were singled out as being a bad and abusive landlord, and in fact have been barred from operating in certain jurisdictions. In other words, they've been singled out as standing in opposition to this council's goals and vision of housing for all in Columbus. At the Housing for All event last week, in fact, Councilmember Favor said that housing is a human right, and we will not accept the status quo in pursuing housing for all. I agree with that. Luxury developments like this one from ACC and Blackstone are the status quo. And council can take this opportunity to show that the housing strategy isn't just words, it's a commitment to stand up for these values. I've been following this development closely from the very beginning, and I've spoken at the University Area Commission, at the Development Commission, and now here. I've testified at maybe a half dozen times. And I've asked over and over if there'll be any affordable housing created by this development. The answer from ACC and Blackstone has always been no, and sometimes just sort of blank stares. The zoning process is all about what kind of use would be suitable in a specific location. Zoning is at issue in this case, and zoning is inherently a question of whether the use furthers the city's goals for housing, for instance, or for whatever is being built in that area. If reducing evictions, providing affordable housing, and stopping abusive landlords are the city's goals, then granting this variance and allowing Blackstone to build for the first time in Columbus, granting this variance works actively against all of this council's stated goals. The housing crisis is an investment opportunity for companies like Blackstone, and saying no to ACC and Blackstone's use of this parcel is a chance for council to be true to its word and give actual meaning to the phrase housing for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldmeyer. The next speaker to come before council is Evan Davies. Evan is also speaking against ordinance 1784 in zoning. Evan, welcome to council. If you can state your name and if you represent an organization, but you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Evan Davies. I've been a resident of the University District for 4 years now. I am a queer resident and service worker. I'm against the proposed development at 50 West Lane because, as the previous speaker said, the named developer is the American Campus Communities Corporation, which is owned in majority by the Blackstone hedge fund. And we've seen all over the country, Blackstone has purchased up many, many affordable units, developed them to make maximum profit, and evicted thousands of people. In my hometown of San Diego in 2021, they purchased thousands of affordable units, evicted dozens of people, and led their tenants to band together in the creation of the Blackstone Tenants Union to ask the question, if they have billions of dollars, what's the need for kicking people out of their homes and getting more money? Why are they so money hungry? Because at the end of the day, this is a corporation that handles trillions of dollars of assets and makes dozens of billions of dollars in profit every year. And we've seen all over the country, their strategy is to raise the rent, evict people, and that harm falls disproportionately on queer people and on service workers like myself. I live just 2 blocks north of the proposed development, which is a very heavily queer neighborhood compared to the rest of the city. And every trans person I know in the neighborhood works a service job where we often experience sexual harassment, are intimidated with violence, and for the most part make much lower wages than our straight counterparts. And most of the trans people I know in the neighborhood have been homeless at one point or another. My partner and I have experienced housing discrimination, being kicked out of our homes, and employment discrimination because we're queer. And we think that the state of queer issues in Ohio right now is very, very bad. There are threats to our physical security all over the state, and the number of places where we can be able to live on the type of salary that queer people disproportionately make as service workers, and where our physical safety will not be threatened, we have very few choices. And I am afraid that if Blackstone is allowed to access the Columbus housing market, particularly in our neighborhood, queer and trans people like myself will be evicted in the dozens or even hundreds, that our rents will go up and make the community much less affordable, and that this will, lead to much graver threats on our physical safety and leave, me personally without a lot of options and potentially have to leave the state of Ohio, which I've lived in and loved for 4 years at this point entirely, because I'm afraid for my safety. And, there have been white nationalist and neo-Nazi marches even in our own fairly accepting neighborhood. And at the end of the day, the council, particularly Member Favor, have advocated for an end to evictions and housing for all, and we think following through on this commitment means not facilitating the type of development that Blackstone seeks to provide and destroying the queer community in the University District. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan, for your testimony and sharing your story. I appreciate you. And the last speaker on this ordinance is Ty. Ty, I want to respect how you say your last name, so just come forward. Yeah, and then if you would say your name for us, please. Welcome to council.
Thank you. It's Thai Kiatathakom, sir.
Okay.
My family's from Thailand, and it makes for situations like this about 4 times a week, so it's okay.
I apologize.
May I begin?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Thai. I live in the University District. I'm a student, and I work here in downtown Columbus. I'm joined by my beloved neighbors and friends who have assembled here to oppose the rezoning requested by American Campus Communities, a subsidiary of Blackstone. Blackstone is the largest private landlord in human history. They own hundreds of thousands of properties across the United States and abroad. They have earned international condemnation for their aggressive rent hikes and use of eviction as a profit-making scheme. Now they want a piece of our city, and they're using students like me as their foot in the door. I find that laughable. Let me tell you a little about me. I am the proud son of a cook and a postal worker. I moved here from 400 miles away to attend law school on scholarship. I had to sell my car days after arrival just so that I could afford to live here on my student loan payments. I take the bus to and from work. I live in a crumbling $600 a month studio owned by a landlord who I despise, and I think the feeling is mutual, crammed between my few belongings and a cat who is even more fed up about this than I am, with my bed 5 feet from my stove, which is 5 feet from my toilet. All my friends in the University District live similarly, and the ones blessed to have adequate room share that space with more roommates than they can count. A friend of mine once remarked that they couldn't name a single person they knew who actually lived in one of these new developments on the High Street corridor. I agreed. Now, I'm sure they're around. I'm aware that rich people exist. They're very difficult to ignore. But the fact is, the vast majority of us could never dream of living in apartments such as the ones Blackstone desires to build. Instead, they live like me and the people I know, and hardly by choice. But what if the average Ohioan, like my chosen family, could afford to live in the University District without sacrificing their hygiene, their comfort, and their safety? That is, what if we had a choice? That's the future I dream of, but when I look at the instant proposal, I don't see that future reflected. I see the people's money wrapped neatly in a bow and lovingly handed over to the type of ruling class institution that created this status quo in the first place. And before we yet again entertain the developer's favorite pickup line that more units on the market equals lower rents for everyone, let us remind ourselves that buildings like these are cropping up day after day in Columbus. Yet I don't see rents getting any lower for any person. Do you? Let's label this talking point for what it is: a lie spun to us by the world's corporate landlords as they hoard their gold and lick their lips, wondering which city to strip mine next. I'm sick of watching the working class get cut out of the deal. I'm tired of seeing our schools gutted, our public services plundered, and our neighbors left to rot on the sidewalk. I'm done with the housing crisis being used as an excuse to build playgrounds for the rich instead of seeing our people out of cages and off the street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ty, and thank you for the speakers. The fourth speaker on this ordinance was Brian Estabrook. Brian, I would just encourage you, as this legislation comes up for a vote and there's more consideration, to engage. I'm just going to ask the housing chair. This is early, so I don't know if you have any response now or you want to push folks to next whenever it comes.
No, we've been
Not
in
housing.
Yep.
Zoning chair, I apologize.
We've been in communication with the University Area District, Area Commission, and other folks in the area. Obviously, we've received a number of written testimonies in addition to the folks that have spoke this evening. As the council president mentioned earlier, this was on first reading at this meeting. This would come up at our next council meeting for a potential vote. So between now and then, if folks want to engage, certainly with my office, we always encourage to chat with all of the offices. They have the ability to have both a briefing from the area commission, the applicant, and anyone else who would want to engage in that process. So this is the time to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we appreciate your advocacy, and we still have time. We are still debating this as we speak, so look forward to your continued engagement. Next speaker that we have before council is Josh Greenberg, speaking against ordinance 2135. Sorry.
Is this ordinance 2135-2023?
Yes, but I have you down also, Mr. Greenberg, on ordinance 0134 as well. Is that true?
I'm going to speak, is that the resolution?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. But this is for the ordinance.
This is the ordinance.
Make sure I get it straight.
No, you're fine.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
My name's Josh Greenberg. I own 2 buildings on High Street in front of where the North Market Tower is going, in front of the convention center. I speak for all the buildings, the 5 buildings on High Street across the convention center and the local businesses. I spent hundreds of hours and many sleepless nights on this issue over the past few years. From the beginning of this process, I have said that I will support the city with the development of the North Market Tower as long as my tenants are able to have workable services, including trash, loading, and maintenance. Rockbridge, the developer, or behind the developer, has been difficult at best from the beginning and have tried to control how we operate our businesses. Their pitch has been that we'll increase our property values. I ask council members, please, council members, for a second. Imagine your own home for a minute. Now a builder comes along and claims to increase your property value and your neighborhood's property value by building a more valuable home next door. Sounds good. But there's only one catch. You got to take your trash 80 yards away. And in 40 years, you might not have trash to use. And I control many maintenance service issues for your home. I don't think you would agree that that would increase your property value. Fortunately, the good news is that some people from the city have listened and helped to protect us. I want to particularly express my gratitude to Director Jennifer Gallagher, all the building owners and small businesses on the block I mentioned, or I'm about to mention, Agave and Rye, Novak's, Barley's, Mikey's Pizza, Bear Burger, Denmark, Escape Room, and all the building owners, reached out to her when we were getting nowhere with different people in the city, and she responded immediately. And since January, we've been working with her and Rockbridge on a memorandum of understanding. While we have made compromises, we believe we can make it work. We just received it in the last week, and we need to iron it out this week so it could be included in this ordinance in what I will call the whereas section of the ordinance. I want to read to you a couple quotes in closing from 1991. One is from the development director back then. The projects that we built rehabilitated a sizable part of what is now a crumbling block between Spruce and Vine. And this is from the North Market Development Authority, who has basically blown me off this whole time. The projects are a boost to the neighborhood and are a sign that businesses are believing in redevelopment in the area. What I'm saying is that we have made it happen, and we can't get penalized now. We developed the area, and we are all for further development, as long as our businesses are protected. It is not fair for the big guy to be able to control the little guy. We are asking City Council to protect us. Let us finish up the MOU and put it in the section of this ordinance before it passes. This will protect our businesses. If that absolutely cannot happen, then we need a guarantee from City Council to create a new ordinance to protect us before the city is planning very soon to give us land to developer. After that, I think we miss a real opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Just because it was so specific, I do want to we will be in touch. I think that it sounds like you have some point folks within the administration that you're working with, but we just want to make sure.
Yeah, within the city, like Gallagher's been great.
Perfect.
But
Well,
other people, not so great.
This week, we would like to engage with you just to understand your concerns, speaking on behalf of the business owners on the strip, on that block. So we'd like to follow up more. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much.
But you can stay right there, Mr. Greenberg, because you're speaking next on Resolution 0134X, that's 2023.
Would it be possible for Zach Price owns 2 buildings on the street? He's really going to talk about the substance. I was going to add something like 1 minute, 15 seconds after him.
Sure.
Okay.
Within the next speaker to come before council is Zach Price, speaking against Resolution 0134X. Mr. Price, welcome to council.
Good evening, members of council, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. As you know, I'm here speaking against the resolution as proposed. I do represent 459 High Street Development LLC and Yankee Brothers LLC. The addresses are 457 through 465 North High Street, more commonly known as the Yankee Trader Buildings. I want it to be clear that I do support the project moving forward and improvement of the area. Ultimately, I believe it'll be a good thing for the city of Columbus. I am opposed to the resolution as currently written, and what it does is, as shown in Exhibit A, is it outlines a boundary which leaves us a very small right-of-way, not as is currently there today, and does not allow us adequate ability to operate and maintain the building and for our small business tenants to service their space. So I believe that this could simply be solved through an amendment to the resolution, but as it is right now, we would be essentially unable to service that building without crossing through this NCA, which is essentially controlled by members of the development. And for an example, if we had to replace an air conditioning unit or the roof on the building, we would be required to pass through that property and then be subject to the whims of what they would require and how we operate within that right-of-way. So if you look at the street today, it's a fairly wide street. There's a full lane with parking or loading on either side, as well as sidewalks. And what is drawn in Exhibit A, it actually extends what you know is the sidewalk and parking lot of the North Market out into the right-of-way and pushes the right-of-way up against these buildings so that it's only a 20-foot wide space, largely taken up by sidewalk, trees, and just a small valet space. But it's, again, inaccessible without passing through this NCA. So we feel we can have it addressed through an amendment, either through changing the boundaries of the NCA or through putting in place some sort of an access easement. So that's what we hope to achieve, and look forward to working with the city further on this before this passes. But the city has been great to work with so far. The developer has been challenging, but we do look forward to moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Director, is there a point of contact that can be established with Mr. Price? It sounds like this is a...
Yes, President Harden, happy to do that. We'll follow up afterwards. But just to share with the full council that the new community authority is not one that is authorized to approve or disapprove any improvements or changes to structures around it. It is really a entity that can levy an additional charge on the property owners within the new community district, and that's really the purpose. It's not like a area commission where an owner would have to go get additional approval to make improvements.
Thank you. We just want to establish that point of contact, and I'm sure Chair Bankston will also be engaged, just to make sure that you understand or at least have your questions answered to the specifics of your testimony. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Greenberg, do you want to come back and speak on this resolution? You have 3 minutes.
Thanks again. I'm just changing this a little bit right now because of what I heard.
Sure.
From the beginning, Rockbridge is trying to control the right-of-way with us. I won't go into all the details. We weren't willing to do that, and I see this NCA and the way they have it structured as a way for them to do that. That's the only point I wanted to make. I wasn't planning on making that. So I just want to say, this is what I plan to say. I agree with everything Zach has said. We cannot let the developer control our businesses. But more importantly, this resolution is just another example why we need City Council's help from being bullied by Rockbridge. I will be the best neighbor in the world if they're just fair with us. And I want to give one example, and it's just something we've been up against for the last couple of years, and up until this weekend. I literally found out about this meeting on TikTok on Friday, thankfully, and saw this. Yeah, Columbus Underground had an article, and I thought, wait a minute, they're doing this on Monday? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so then we found this resolution also. I looked online. But okay, so this NCA typically has 9 members. Typically, you're going to have 4 people from the developer, 4 from the community. That's what it is, new community association, and then 1 from the city. Here's the list. From the developer. From the county representative, developer. North Market representative, developer. North Market representative, developer. Columbus, developer. Now here's the supposed community members around. Michael Gold, Vice President, Rockbridge. He's a citizen. Justin Argentine, Rockbridge employee. Ben Pearson, in charge of the whole thing, Rockbridge employee. Gregory Coruscope, I don't know who he is, but he's an attorney for Ice Miller. I'm assuming he works for Rockbridge. I can't promise that. And the 9th one is the city. So 8 out of the 9 people are with the developer. And we were told we were going to get a seat. And not just that, you'd think, the Greek church should have a seat. Some of the other businesses and residents in the area should have a seat. This affects our whole community. And again, last point, I'm just saying, we need your guys' help. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Director, you want to respond today, or do you want to just make sure, I want to make sure that there are point of contacts throughout the week as we continue to engage on this piece of legislation. So that's the biggest point. But Director?
Yeah, happy to continue to serve as a point of contact and talk through that. There are 5 publicly appointed individuals. One is Director Owens. The other is Ken Wilson, who's from Franklin County, as their administrator. And then the North Market Development Association is we're appointing their executive director as well as the president of their board. And then the 5th, more of a community member, is the appointment of Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi is currently the executive director of SWACO, former finance director, and has really good knowledge around the operations of the North Market. What I'd say, this board consists of those members of the entity within the boundary of the new community district, and that levy those charges against the buildings within that new community district. So we do have representatives from the merchants in the tower there as well. So I wanted to share that with all council, but I'm happy to talk offline on further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker to come before council speaking against resolution 0134X is Ms. Stephanie Coe. Stephanie, welcome back to council. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, President Harden, members of council. Excuse me, I'm uneven with this boot on my foot. I'm Stephanie Coe. I'm here tonight as an attorney with Arnold & Clifford, 115 West Main Street, Suite 400, Columbus, Ohio, 43215. We represent multiple property owners along High Street, which back up to Wall Street in the North Market development. You've heard from some of the property owners tonight. I'm here tonight to advocate for and support our clients' concerns. There are 6 pieces of legislation on the agenda tonight that relate to the North Market development project. I submitted speaker slips on 2 pieces of legislation we're concerned about, but my comments right now will address both of those. Sometimes people ask why we're just showing up at the last minute, and I wanted to make clear that our clients have been in contact with staff from Rockbridge and the city since at least June of 2021 regarding the development and specifically the activities along Wall Street that will impact their businesses and tenants. There are 3 primary concerns raised by our clients: the location of trash and the control of that area and the costs associated with it, the ability of my clients and their tenants to get deliveries along Wall Street as they have in the past, and the ability of my clients and their tenants to perform maintenance without the permission of the developer. This relates to the boundaries of the NCA and control. My clients are not opposed to the development of the North Market area, but they do want formal, memorialized assurances from the city and the developer that they will continue to be able to operate their businesses without negative consequences from the development. My clients have had a very difficult time attempting to resolve their concerns with the developer, but have been extremely pleased with the input and working relationship with Public Service Director Gallagher and her staff. The director provided an MOU draft in the last week, and my clients agree in principle. The second and third issues have to do with the transfer of the property to the developer, as well as the creation of the NCA. My clients are concerned that the NCA limits their access to Wall Street and the ability to perform maintenance, etc., without the developer's permission. It also appears that the developer will own the land where the trash compactor will be located. It's already just mentioned, but 9 members of the board seem to have a significant relationship with the developer and not necessarily a significant relationship of any kind with any of the community members. My clients are not asking council to terminate the project or to create delay. They just want what has been promised to them all along: a clear and enforceable agreement that trash easements will remain in place, their access to a trash compactor will not be controlled by the developer, and the easement and access to Wall Street is not limited or controlled by the developer as well. This can be done by an MOU or other similar agreement adopted by council as part of these 6 related pieces of legislation, so their concerns can be addressed today, as well as an easement to address the issues along Wall Street, and make sure that they're not left with empty promises controlled by the developer in the future. We can submit draft language or meet with members of council and their staff or the departments to ensure that these issues that, in comparison to the overall project, are minor, but are critical to our clients being able to continue their businesses that were instrumental in starting the rehabilitation process in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stephanie. No, were you saying that you don't need to speak again on the other ordinance that it was?
I don't need to speak again, no, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Stephanie, you have a contact with director for follow-up? We want to make sure all of these things are captured, Chair. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And Ms. Cohen, to all other speakers, J.P. Dorval from my office is here, so he'll probably come meet you down here in the hallway to make sure we get your contact as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker to come before council is Don Proton, speaking on 1984.
What's up, everybody? Before we begin, Council President Harden, Councilmember Banks, I was disappointed to miss the Franklinton party. You had John Husted in Franklinton. I missed the party. Man, I'm up there busting these guys' heads. I had to chase Husted all the way from the State House into the Vern Rife building, and you guys are cutting ribbons with him. Like, I would at least I see my invite got lost in the mail. But why I'm here today, this ordinance that we're talking about here, right? Like, there's some good in it. Like, I agree, these scooters, they're a little bit of a menace. People should park there, obstructing the sidewalk. I get that. But going after homeless people, like, without warning, now it's basically, we're gutting the zoning, the appeals process and the zoning, and we're going to destroy their homes, and then, we're going to destroy their homes, and then we're going to charge them for the fees? Like, that's crazy to me, and I get it, you know what I mean? These suburbanites come into town, and they see homeless people as, like, some menace, and the trash, and the littering, and da-da-da-da-da, but, like, that's the price of the society we live in, right? Like, capitalism requires there to be an underclass. And you guys didn't create it, but at the same time, you guys really aren't doing much to alleviate the problem. And going after homeless people this way signifies to me anyway that you guys know it's going to get worse. There are going to be people who have no other option. You know, that's the best available option to them in their minds, to go live under the overpass at 315. You know, like, I see people like that, and I'm like, you know, hey, I wish I had the balls to live like that. It'd be kind of cool. It'd be a lot cheaper, you know, live off the land like a frontiersman as I was destined to be. But secondly, like, I know I present myself as a paragon of perfection up here, and I'm not. Like, surprise, surprise. But, like, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And if those mistakes would have gone different, anyone in here is way closer to being that person under the bridge begging for money. You know, people will say, oh, why'd you give that guy $5? He's going to go buy drugs. Well, I hope so. He's living under a bridge. And this city isn't doing anything, but we're going to go pay some jackbooted thugs to destroy their tent, throw their belongings in the trash, like they're going to go somewhere else. They're just going to move somewhere else, you know? And, like, I'm just reminded of the words, when it comes to this ordinance, I'm reminded of the words of Ron Perlman, the great actor of Sons of Anarchy, the great cinematic hit. You know, he warned him. He said, there's a lot of ways to lose a house in this country. Some of them financial, and some of them are other ways. You know, and how would you like it if you just woke up someday and some Antifa super soldier burned down your house and then sent you the fire department's bill? I doubt you would care for it too much. So I ask you guys to reconsider, man. Get the tent, get the structures out of this legislation, man. The scooters can stay. That's problematic.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Director to speak on this after. We have one more speaker on this, if you'd be open to, I mean, not, if you could speak on this. The next speaker to come before council is Rachel Winning, speaking on 1984 as well.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. So I actually have a preliminary question, which maybe we're going to have the director speak to. Is it the intent of this legislation to give the director of public safety the power to remove without notice tents occupied by homeless individuals?
I will let the director speak on that after you speak, if that's.
Okay. I mean, it kind of, you know, the rest of my testimony kind of depends on that, if that's the intent or not.
Okay, Director, you can speak on the legislation, and that would be the time that she speaks now before you speak. Okay. Director, will you speak on Ordinance 1984, please?
Yes, so Title IX has to do with permits to do work within the right-of-way. So all this is doing is giving us the authority to make sure that those contractors, et cetera, make sure they are getting the permits to do the work, because some are not. And then when they are getting the permits, that they are following up and doing the work as stated within the permit. Because what is happening right now is we are having some bad actors out there who are going out, starting work, and not putting the right-of-way back as they found it, and it's leaving it in very unsafe conditions for our residents of the city. So it's for us to be able to go out and hold them accountable to what the permit says they are supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Rachel.
I do understand that that is what part of this change to Title IX is meant to do. However, if you look at the definitions section, it's not limited only to contractors or developers. It includes homeowners. It defines pretty much anyone. It includes corporations in finding criminal liability, but it includes everyone. It specifically notes that there are parts that apply to homeowners who have gates that might open into the sidewalk. So I don't really think it's only applicable to only developers or people getting permits. I would ask that this council table this legislation and amend it in order to remove the effect of putting homeless people out of their tents where they live. I think it is applicable to them. I don't think it's limited only to permits if you look at the definitions. And so I would ask that you table it and amend it because people don't deserve to be kicked out of their homes.
Thank you. Are you done?
That's all. Yeah.
All right, all right. Thank you so much. And just a reminder again, as we close up this portion of the agenda, the first reading is not an actual portion where council takes an action. So we are not at the point where we could postpone or amend or do those things. That would have to happen as we come to vote for it. So this is a procedural step in a piece of legislation. It is to allow the public to know what's coming and to be able to engage. So we appreciate the advocacy. I think that the different chairs heard those pieces, and I didn't give you an opportunity if you wanted to say anything.
I just wanted to say, so first of all, thank you. I know that these pieces of legislation are sometimes written in a way that can be confusing. And so I just encourage folks that whenever there's a piece of legislation that comes in and they have a specific question, this is a great place to come and advocate. But if you reach out to our offices, we're happy to have a conversation because I think then we can more appropriately address specific pieces of the legislation that might either be read or understood a certain way, or if people have issues or folks have issues with a certain piece of it, then we can help to break that down and answer those questions in a much more effective way than being in a bigger arena like this. So folks I invite you to please reach out to my office. My aide, Jessica Caceres, is here, and she's happy to connect with you and happy to discuss the pieces of legislation that folks may have challenges with, or to break things down if there seems to be a portion of it that are understood one way and maybe the intention is something different. So just want to add that.
Thank you, Councilmember. And so we look forward to your continued engagement and advocacy on those noted pieces of legislation. The following ordinances appear on our agenda as consent action. Will the clerk now read those into the record?
Resolution of Expression 135X-2023, Economic Development Committee. Ordinances 1457-2023, 1835, 1852, 1970, and 1973-2023, Small and Minority Business Committee, Ordinance 1956-2023, Technology Committee, Ordinances 1630 and 1755-2023, Public Service and Transportation Committee, Ordinances 1915 and 1958-2023, Neighborhoods and Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs Committee, Ordinance 2031-2023, Recreation and Parks Committee, Ordinances 1800 and 1807-2023, Public Utilities Committee, Resolution 120X-2023, and Ordinances 1343, 1676, 1698, 1713, 1727, 1821, 1837, 1884, 1959, 1986, 1997-2023, Building and Zoning Policy Committee, Ordinance 1904-2023, Housing Committee, Ordinances 1693, 1694, 1695, 1978, 1980, 2003, 2012, and 2059-2023, Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee, Ordinance 1903-2023, Health and Human Services Committee, Ordinances 1645, 1826, 1827, 1856, 1858, 1869, 1874-2023. Public Safety Committee, Ordinance 2193-2023. Administration Committee, Ordinance 1769-2023. Finance Committee, Ordinances 1689, 1811, 1853, 1913, 1989, 2071, 2023, and appointments from the Mayor's Office numbered A0149, 150, 151, 152, and 153-2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one speaker on the consent portion of the agenda, Mr. Nate Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome back to council.
$1612 Arlington Avenue, Mr. Ruth Angels Wilkins. I will be speaking for this, but it's not in my area. 1243 Maynard Drive. It was a 4-bedroom house, 2-bathroom, 1.5 bathroom. Was built in 1959. It was holding a land bank, I believe, 2019. It was a 4-bedroom house, 2-bathroom, 1.5 bathroom. Sits in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. To my knowledge here, we have another house that was built over, I think in 1959, was a huge house, sit on 1 acre of a parcel of a lot here, and today it still sits as a vacant land. I am coming to you today out of my area. This particular home has sit in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. And here we are talking about affordable housing. And I don't know what was wrong with the property, why was it torn down, but to have a house that was built like that in early 1950s, and to see a vacant lot like this, you know, if we want to restrict some homes that's affordable for college students, for disability people, seniors, and those type of things, we want to start with something like this. Even though it was gone, but I believe this was a huge piece of land one time or another. In closing, I want to see on the auditor's website, you have QEFA and SK. I don't know what that means, but, and to my new ideas, I want to see SDMH stands for Development and Order Homes. I don't know what QE stands for, FA stands for. I don't know what that means, but we have something here on the Franklin County Auditor's website for all this, but it seemed like this is taken over through the state of Ohio, forfeiture foreclosure. And once the city gets this, I want to see some new entities over here in this slot here. But since this house wasn't sold, I want to see something in place of this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the consent portion of the agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve these items as needed as consent? By voice. You can't. Is there a second? Clerk, please call the roll by voice.
Mr. Bankston?
Yes, with the exception of ordinances 1978, 1826, 1827, 1858, 2071-2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
Yes, with the exception of ordinances 1826, 1645, and 1689, 2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes. consent portion of the agenda carries with noted exceptions. We'll now proceed with second reading of 30-day postponed and emergency legislation. The first committee to come before council is the Economic Development Committee, chaired by Councilmember Banks. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight in the Economic Development Committee for second reading, we have ordinance 1824-2023 to accept the application of Bible Truth Tabernacle for the annexation of certain territories containing 6.4 plus or minus acres in Jackson Township. If there are no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for, first, I move to amend this ordinance to emergency.
Second.
Roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
And now I move for passage.
Second.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, in the Economic Development Committee, we have ordinance 1882-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Columbus Regional Airport Authority for public infrastructure improvements supporting economic development in the Rickenbacker area, to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $3,275,000 from the Northland and Other Acquisitions Bond Fund to allow for the payment of expenditures prior to the issuance of a purchase order. The City of Columbus has a well-established relationship with the Columbus Regional Airport Authority regarding the condition of Rickenbacker area, which continues to be an economic juggernaut for our city. This ordinance continues the city's commitment to the economic development of the Rickenbacker area in partnership with the airport by making investments to support future development and its growth. Seeing no questions or comments from my colleagues, I move for passage at this time.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
And next, we have ordinance 1968-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a contract with Paul Worth Associates in an amount up to $60,000 for support of the department's public engagement and housing communication, to waive competitive bidding requirements of Chapter 329 of the Columbus City Codes, to authorize the expenditure of $60,000 from the Department of Development's 2023 general fund budget, to authorize payments for services starting March 1st, 2023, and to repeal ordinance 2748-2022. In the summer of 2021, the Department of Development awarded a contract to Paul Worth and Associates to support their public engagement strategies regarding their affordable housing efforts via a competitive bidding process. Due to an administrative error, the contract was not extended in time for Paul Worth Associates for their ongoing work with the department on this effort. So this ordinance remedies that error by both repealing the previous contract in ordinance 2748-2022 and waiving competitive bidding. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
All right, next in economic development, we have ordinance 1971-2023 to authorize the Director of Department of Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority to approve funding for urban redevelopment projects, to authorize the expenditure of $4 million from the Development Taxable Bond Fund. This piece of legislation here, the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority, it provides gap funding for small-scale redevelopment projects in traditional neighborhood corridors. The gap funding in this ordinance will assist in revitalization of properties within the city's urban core and adjacent neighborhoods. The Finance Authority will work with the city to determine the project's eligibilities. Are there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you, Council President. I need to go back to page 11 and 12 of our consent agenda to read two pieces of legislation in economic development.
Sure.
Thank you. Tonight on the consent agenda under economic development, we have ordinance 1818-2023 to accept the application of Edward Hawk and Michael and Linda Lee for the annexation of certain territories containing 5.5 plus or minus acres in Plain Township. At this time, I move to postpone this ordinance to the July 24th council meeting.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Postpone.
And last, in the Economic Development Committee, we have ordinance 1822-2023 to accept the application of Jamie Helber and Michelle Copley for the annexation of certain territories containing 3.8 plus or minus acres in Plain Township. I also move to postpone this ordinance to the July 24th council meeting.
Is there a second? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Postpone.
Thank you, President Harden. May I move to the Technology Committee?
Please.
Thank you. Tonight in technology, we have for second reading ordinance 1906-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology on behalf of the Mayor's Office to enter into contract with IndyGov Corporation for software licensing services for the period July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, to waive the relevant provisions of the Columbus City codes pertaining to competitive bidding, to authorize the expenditure of $105,580 from the Department of Technology Information Services Division Information Services Operating Fund, and to declare an emergency. IndyGov is a web-based application that allows the mayor's office to document, track, and analyze manage messages received directly from constituents. IndyGov is used primarily by the Mayor's Office of External Affairs and is custom-built so that constituent inquiries are assigned to the appropriate team members for response while also engaging other city department staff or external resources as required. These inquiries are often separate and apart from inquiries that come through the 311 system. Last year, the Mayor's Office entered into a short-term contract for a limited number of users with IndyGov after receiving several demonstrations and conducting an internal research-based vetting process. Based on that research and upon successful completion of the pilot phase, the decision was made to expand the number of licenses, credentials, so that additional members of the Mayor's Office staff are able to access the IndyGov system. The Department of Technology, on behalf of the Mayor's Office, believes that it is in the city's best interest to waive competitive bidding to initiate services from the supplier at the price that was proposed and to ensure no interruption of services. For that, emergency action is requested to expedite authorization of this contract and to ensure no disruption in service. Director Orth, are you here with us? If you could just talk about this a little bit and how residents can engage with the Mayor's Office and submit their inquiries.
President Harden, President Pro Tem Dorans, Chair Banks, and members of council. This is an internal system that's based on telephone calls to the Mayor's Office. The Mayor's Office, as you indicated, became aware of the IndyGov system through relationships developed through the United States Conference of Mayors. As you indicated, several demonstrations were held with various mayors, office staff, and the program was vetted and compared to other programs. Based on the research, the decision was made to enter into a short-term contract for a limited number of users to test the product. Upon successful completion of the pilot phase, the decision was made to expand the number of licenses so that additional members of the Mayor's Office staff are able to access the IndyGov system. The system tracks all incoming constituent communication. It allows the mayor to see patterns among constituents and to manage communication back to individual constituents.
Thank you, Director. Want to make sure that we are responsive to our constituents. So you can reach the Mayor's Office at 614-645-7671 to utilize this new technology. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second. Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have this evening in my committees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Recreation and Parks Committee, just joking, is the Neighborhoods and Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs Committee, chaired by Councilmember Rosa de Padilla.
Thanks, I'm back. I have 3 items today in Neighborhoods and Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs. First is Ordinance 1848-2023 to authorize the city clerk to enter into a grant agreement with Columbus City Schools in support of their Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs, or IRMA, Youth Council and Public Affairs Show, to authorize an appropriate expenditure within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund and to declare an emergency. Columbus City Schools has more than 8,000 English as a second language students, with 676 of them being new to the United States. CCS families speak over 110 different languages representing 104 countries. Many Columbus City School families are immigrants or new to Columbus and are not aware of civic resources available to strengthen and support their growth. By publicizing these initiatives and resources, listeners will gain an awareness of and ideally take advantage of city programs. Columbus City School students will serve as co-hosts and/or guests on a podcast that will interview local leaders to discuss civic issues such as immigration, housing, recreation and parks, and financial resources. Funding would support the purchasing of equipment to produce the show and time at local radio stations so that the general public can hear the podcast. So I'm excited to invite up to speak a little bit about the ordinance and about this program, Paul Brown. He is the Director of Multimedia Services at Columbus City Schools.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Hardin, President Pro Tem Duranz, and council members. My name's Paul Brown, Director of Multimedia Services for Columbus City Schools, and I oversee WCBE Radio. I'm wearing this hat because it has the new logo, and that represents our new focus on student-centered programming, and that's exactly what this is we're working on. So I am proud to be here tonight to accept this funding from Councilmember Barroso de Padilla to support and to uplift the voices of our English as second language students through a podcast program that will air on WCBE. It is a student-led immigrant, refugee, and migrant public affairs radio show. Expanding her council committee work, this program will address current issues affecting our community and the nation from the unique lens of being young and not only new to Columbus, but new to America. Our team is looking forward to this opportunity, assisting with the creation of this program and bringing our collective vision to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? I'm very excited. We've been working on this for a little while. I think also uplifting the voice of our young people and empowering them and giving them this platform so that they can share their perspectives. One of the things that we did in our Immigrants Make Columbus Town Halls is we actually did a photo project where our young people took pictures of the places where they both feel a sense of belonging and where they don't. And it was a really powerful way for young people to express themselves. And so we're excited for all the conversations that will come. I hope all the folks who are here are ready to be guests one day on the podcast or to interact with our students as they develop programming and stories for the podcast. So thank you for all of your work as well.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Do my colleagues have any other questions, comments? Great. Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next is Ordinance 1960-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Neighborhoods to enter into a beneficiary grant agreement with the United Way of Central Ohio in support of the One Linden Schools Initiative to authorize the transfer and expenditure from the general fund and to declare an emergency. This ordinance will support the implementation of the One Linden Schools Initiative, or OLSI, at Hamilton STEM Academy and Windsor STEM Academy. OLSI utilizes the community collaboration model to directly engage students, parents, guardians, and educators at both schools. This model has 5 components: academic learning, community partnerships, health and social services, family engagement, and support and youth development. I just upgraded your position here, Director William Scott. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Good evening, Chair Barosa de Padilla, President Hardin, members of council. Yes, this is just another commitment and one of the pillars of the work in our One Linden plan to provide support to the families in Linden, and not only the students, but to provide wraparound services and needs for those families. So thank you for your consideration.
Absolutely. Very excited. We have a long-standing relationship with both schools, and so I'm excited to see the expansion of services for the community and for all of the families within Linden. So do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Great. Seeing that, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bangston. Ms. Barosa de Padilla.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Dorans. Ms. Faber. Mr. Remy. President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you. And finally, we have ordinance 2140, 2023, to authorize the city clerk to enter into contract with Hart and Hunter Incorporated, doing business as Hunter Marketing, for marketing and community outreach services to authorize an appropriation expenditure of $75,000 from the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund and to declare an emergency. During Women's History Month earlier this year, we passed legislation that prohibits employers from asking job applicants about their previous salary or wages as a strategy to both close the wage gap and bring equity to the salary negotiation process. This legislation will go into effect next March of 2024. To communicate this new law to both job seekers and to employers, we sought the support of a marketing and outreach professional to develop an outreach campaign and a learning campaign for both parties. The campaign will provide businesses and individual applicants an understanding of the impacts of pay equity legislation and will include partnering with current HR experts to develop a toolkit useful for impacted employers. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. That's all for me this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Recreation and Parks Committee, chaired by Councilmember Brown. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. This evening, I have in Rec and Parks, second reading of ordinance 1806, 2023, to authorize the Director of Recreation and Parks to modify existing contracts with Moody Nolan and Elford, Inc. for the Fran Ryan Center project, to authorize the transfer of $1,827,013 within the Recreation and Parks voted bond fund, to authorize an amendment of the 2022 capital improvements budget to authorize the expenditure of $23,627,013 from the Recreation and Parks voted bond fund and to declare an emergency. This ordinance allows the funding needed to begin the construction phase of the Fran Ryan Center project, an innovative senior-focused community center and park. This evening, we have Deputy Director Steve Highland here, who can share additional details. Director?
Thank you, Councilmember Brown, members of council. Yes, this is a senior-focused community center project. And by modifying these contracts, Moody, Nolan, and Elford will be able to progress on the next phase of the construction manager risk format to build this facility. And the previous ordinances allowed for the design phase and the pre-construction phase of the project to be completed. It also initiated the opportunity to procure long lead time materials at the beginning of the project. And this final portion of the project will proceed with additional professional services needed and also the full construction of the new facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director Highland. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage and I ask for a voice vote.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row by voice.
Mr. Bangston? Yes. Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans? Yes. Ms. Favor? Mr. Remy? Yes. President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed.
That's all I have this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next committee to come before council is the Public Utilities Committee, chaired by President Pro Tem. President Pro Tem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight in the Public Utilities Committee, we have Ordinance 1715-2023 to authorize an amendment to the 2023 capital improvement budget to authorize the appropriation and transfer of funds from the Sanitary Sewer Reserve Fund to the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund, to authorize the appropriation of fund within the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund, to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter construction contract with JLD Construction Services for the roof redirection Blueprint North 1 Agler Brielle project, to authorize expenditure of up to $2,512,050.95 from the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund and the Sanitary General Obligation Fund to pay for the project. This project involves the redirection of roof laterals to prevent excess stormwater from entering the city's sanitary sewer system to mitigate water embasements, events, and sewer overflows in the North Linden area. Do all my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 1728-2023 to authorize amendment to the 2023 capital improvement budget to authorize the appropriation of the funds in the water freshwater market rate program, to authorize the Director of Department of Public Utilities to enter a construction contract with General Maintenance and Engineering Company for the PAWP Miscellaneous Improvements Roof Replacement Part 1 project, to authorize the expenditure of up to $2,512,000 $42,000 and $42,400 in the Water Fresh Water Market Rate Program Fund for the contract, and to authorize expenditure of up to $2,000 from the Water Fund to pay for prevailing wage services for the project. The work for this project consists of replacing the roof on 3 buildings at the Parsons Avenue Water Plant. Obviously, roofs can't function, or buildings can't function without roofs, so sort of a thing. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 1733-2023 to authorize amendment to the 2023 capital improvement budget, to authorize the transfer of cash and appropriation within the water bond fund, to authorize the Director of Department of Public Utilities to enter a construction contract with General Temperature Control for the O'Shaughnessy Gatehouse Miscellaneous Improvement Project, and to authorize the expenditure of up to $1,753,640 for the project. The work for this project consists of exterior masonry rehabilitation, lighting upgrades, and concrete repair, and roof repairs at the O'Shaughnessy Dam. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, we have ordinance 1750-2023 to authorize an amendment to the 2023 capital improvement budget, to authorize the appropriation and transfer of funds from the Sanitary Sewer Reserve Fund to the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund, to authorize the appropriation of funds within the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund, to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into the construction contract with TUS Forum Technologies LLC for the near North and East Phase 2 Eureka Park project, and to authorize the expenditure of up to $4,939,261.40 from the Sanitary Revolving Loan Fund and the Sanitary Bond Fund to pay for the project. The work funded by this ordinance consists of rehabbing over 7,000 feet of sewer located in the Eureka Park area. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. And finally, we have ordinance 1983-2023 to authorize amendment to the 2023 capital improvement budget, to authorize the transfer of cash and appropriation between projects within the electricity bond fund, to appropriate funds within the electricity special assessment fund, to authorize the Director of Public Utilities to enter into a construction contract with Danbury Electrical Corporation for the street lighting improvement for the Freeway and Kingshill Streets lighting improvement, to authorize expenditure of up to $1,204,245.95 from the electricity bond fund and electricity special assessment fund for the contract, and to declare an emergency. This project will construct the Freeway Kings Hill Street lighting project. The installation of LED lighting within the project will provide both additional sense of safety and security of the residents while being more environmentally friendly. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Councilmember Bankston?
Councilmember Dorans, I'm sorry to belabor this, but I wanted to just point out in the Utilities Committee tonight, if you look under each piece of legislation, it's either minority business or women business participation on that project. So I just wanted to commend Utilities, but also commend our Office of Diversity and Inclusion that got that done, because we're shows here that we're holding ourselves accountable as a city, and that over $10 million tonight just passed that minority and women business enterprises will participate in. So that's just a great thing. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Councilmember Bankston, and certainly to you as well, that without your work, we wouldn't see this on an agenda every single week. And certainly when I meet with the Department of Public Utilities every week, they're very proud of being able to have that on the agenda every week. So it's certainly an effort from everyone at the city to make sure that when we're doing better, that we want to make sure that folks in the community understand that we're doing better, because we're talking about this project being millions of dollars are going back to vendors across our city that maybe in past decades have not had the ability to work on these types of projects before. So sort of a great demonstration of everyone trying to move in a better direction. So thank you, council member. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. And would you mind if we go to the Rules and Reference Committee real quick?
Please.
Thank you. Tonight in the Rules and Reference Committee, I have ordinance 2052-2023 to amend section 329.01 and 329.18 to repeal existing sections of 329.01, 329.18 of the Columbus City Codes to amend the responsible wage provisions in Columbus. This ordinance amends section 329.01 and 329.18 of the Columbus City Codes, which govern competitive steel bidding, and an update to our responsible wage provision of our code. As currently drafted, the responsible wage provision requires that city service contracts in the areas of custodial, landscaping, security, and cleaning and recycling services must abide by a responsible wage law if the vendor is not a small business as defined as having less than 25 employees. The responsible wage has historically been defined as equal to the lowest paid full-time City of Columbus employee. Through an MOU process between the administration and the city's 6 collective bargaining units, that lowest paid employee today will now be making $20 an hour as of this past June 1st, which I think we should pause and certainly commend the administration and our labor partners for being able to move wages up for folks that do the work to keep our city running every single day. Why does that matter to this legislation? Well, to sum up as simply as I can, this legislation will amend our responsible wage law to remove the industry exemptions and the small business exemption. Bottom line, that means that no worker employed on a city service contract will be paid less than $20 an hour. This will help ensure that those in our community that are performing city services are paid a fair wage, even if they're not directly hired by the City of Columbus. We've worked with certainly the administration, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Central Ohio African American Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Columbus, Somali Chamber, and many others to move this legislation forward. And so they want to publicly thank for their help Kirsten Astosi in our Legislative Research Office, Sean Fout and Chris Long from Finance, and everyone at Finance who's really went down the rabbit hole with us over and over again to really figure out how to make sure that we implement this in the right way. We've been talking about this piece of legislation. I feel like we were on second base in March of 2020, and we all know what happened then. So this has been a long time coming, and I think that certainly the time was right to move this forward now after certainly the mayor worked with our labor partners to push that wage forward. Because again, no matter whether someone's a direct employee of the City of Columbus or if they're working for one of our contractors, if you're performing a function as a core function of the City of Columbus, you should be paid a living wage. And certainly this piece of legislation is going to accomplish just that. I also want to commend working with the Department of Finance on how do we implement this ordinance to make sure that the small businesses that we've worked with are aware of this change and that this is reflected on an annual basis. And we've made sure we build into this language, certainly with the Department of Finance to do just that. So not only are we doing the right thing for workers, but we're also doing the right thing for businesses that work with the City of Columbus. So at this point, I want to pause and see if any of my colleagues have any questions or comments. Council President?
Mr. Chair, I just want to applaud your doggedness and leadership to get this over the finish line, and just really grateful for what this signals to our workers, is that, you know, we have a large stick when we think about our purchasing power. And now we get to, so, because there, you know, some of the conversations around these pieces of legislation are, will this exclude folks? And actually, it's the exact opposite. We want to include folks and just know that when we do business in the City of Columbus, regardless if we hire folks directly or through contract, that this is the new standard. And so we hope that we are sending a signal earlier on through tonight's legislation to all those folks who want to do business that for us this is the floor, and so I'm just grateful for that, and grateful for your engagement. Your process also was pretty tight, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Council President. With that, I will move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Council President, that's all I have in my committees at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a motion to recess? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
We are in recess. now come to order. Clerk, please call the roll. Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. We'll now go to the zoning committee. President Pro Tem Dorans chairs that committee. All members serve on it. President Pro Tem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Before we get into tonight's zoning agenda, allow me to briefly explain our current rules pertaining to speaking before council on rezonings and variances. We only hear staff presentation of ordinance that have a disapproval from recommending body, or if you have a public speaker slip to sign up speak against an ordinance. All speakers on council variances, including city staff, area commissioners, applicants, and members of the public, will be sworn in before they give testimony. Representatives of an area commission and applicants are always able to speak on an ordinance and do not need to fill out a speaker slip. Tonight, we have one public speaker on our agenda this evening. On the advice of the city attorney, I will now swear in city staff. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, as you shall answer under the pains or penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please let the record reflect that Tony Celebrezzi and Tim Dietrich from the Department of Building and Zoning Services and Dan Bleschmidt from the Department of Public Service have been sworn in. First, we have ordinance 2016-2023 to rezone 103 Fornoff Road, being 5.5 plus acres located on the south side of Fornoff Road, 310 plus feet east of South High Street, from LM Limited Manufacturing District to AR2 Apartment Residential District. The applicant is NRP Properties, LLC, care of Dave Perry Agent. Proposed use is a multi-unit residential development. City's Department recommendation is approval. The Development Commission's recommendation is approval. The Far South Area Commission's recommendation is also approval, 7-0. We do have one speaker on this piece of legislation, Ms. Amanda Ira. Ms. Ira? Welcome to council. You have 3 minutes, and please state your name and any relationship you have to the property.
My name is Amanda Ira, and I live on South Fifth Street, right behind the proposed build site. But as I was just noticing, it looks like they're not only planning for where the rice bowl sits, but the field that's owned by Gotta Get It Go that's across the street as well. Is that correct? I'll check it out later.
Okay.
So my concern for this build is, number one, there is no busing in the neighborhood for Columbus City Schools. We do not have sidewalks at all in the neighborhood. So our kids are required to walk a mile down Deering Avenue, which is a straight mile stretch with no sidewalks. People go 60 miles an hour like it's no problem, okay? And I'm sorry. There's been countless children hit on Deering. Just a couple months ago, one of our kids was riding their mini bike, trying to cross Deering Road, was hit and killed. And it doesn't seem like anybody cares. The number one cause of death for women in 43207 is dementia, followed by Alzheimer's. And research by the NIH has showed that Alzheimer's and dementia, the number one cause is from environmental factors. It is an industrial area. There's plans to put in a fertilizer plant, and I just don't think stacking apartments in the middle of an industrial area where people are already suffering from health problems is a very good idea. We don't have any parks, not a single park, no green space to play. The green space in the photos, the only open space where people can walk their dogs or kids can go catch fireflies. There is no open space. There is no sidewalks. There's no safe space for them to play at all. So you're going to put 200 plus families into these conditions with Marion Franklin and South High School, the only available schools, and they are the two worst schools in the entire district. So until until some of these things are fixed, I don't think it is responsible to add that many families into conditions that they're not even going to be aware of. We have, I don't know if you guys ever go to 104 and 71, but on a hot summer day, it doesn't smell great. You got the waste treatment plant, you got the CRC resin plant that when I was a kid blew up and rained chemicals down on us. Nobody cared then. Buckeye Steel got fined $660,000 for knowingly operating their foundry without filtration. So I just think it's irresponsible to subject these families to this area that needs a whole lot of work done for the people who are already there before you add more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ira. Any questions or comments from any of my colleagues? Councilmember Favor.
Ma'am? I'm sorry. Just a question for you right over here. Well, first of all, thank you for taking time to come down and to advocate on behalf of your community. My question to you is this project a project that you could get comfortable with if these things were working in tandem, that if we were able to address some of the issues that you called out, sidewalks and things of that nature?
Absolutely. So you see where it says site. That's not where the rice bowl stood. And so on the news, it said, and the rice bowl is here, up on the corner. And it said that they were buying that. So that field is owned by the other company back here, and they have a for lease sign up. So I don't know if they just sold that separately maybe, but also on the other side of this is the old Pest House Cemetery. That's a cemetery that's been long forgotten, okay? Where people suffered, were put in a pestilence house, died of pox, whatnot. And the cemetery, you know, there's no marker, there's no memorial, there's nothing. The bodies are still there. So what happens if that starts getting dug up? Because I imagine it's going to expand. They'll probably buy integrity cycles and build apartments there. And then like our view's just 4-story apartment buildings, or I don't know. But there's 200 families. And we don't have a rec center on the south side. We don't have no parks except all the way down in German Village. You know, so can we get a park?
Yeah, and I think that these are all valid points that you're making. You know, I think where I chair housing, and so I talk a lot about the need for us to invest in housing all across the city of Columbus, because we are, you know, now we're at 44 people a day moving into the city of Columbus. And so you're right, we are going to be growing like this. And so things are going to look a lot differently in the city of Columbus, but we also have to acknowledge some of the challenges that comes with that growth, and some of that is infrastructure. But it can be, we can do both at the same time, right? Okay.
But another thing, so there's a light at High Street and Deering, okay? On the bottom half of the site. So people cut down Fornoff from High Street going this way, and then down Fifth, and then to Deering to avoid the light. And then they also cut down Fifth the other way to go up Fornoff to avoid the light. So have you guys thought about the traffic flow for this at all? Because on my Ring door camera, I have over 500 cars that go down our road a day. You know, that's quite a bit. And our kids they have nowhere to play.
Understood.
And these families won't have anywhere to play either.
Understood. Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Sauer.
And Chair, just like every other project, there was a traffic study that was conducted. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Sauer, for your comments. So, I mean, one of the things when we look at these kind of projects, when we talk about the lack of infrastructure that's there, it's not surprising it doesn't exist considering it's currently zoned manufacturing. There's a reason that there's lack of sidewalks, some lack of green space. As more residents move to an area, that's when you see, really from a capital budget standpoint, the city can really do more planning. And that's why when you see a project being approved 7-0 by an area commission, that's what we really rely upon as well to help provide that local feedback to make sure that infrastructure that's needed for this new housing really to complement one another. So again, some of the things I think Ms. Ira would like to see in that area, it's more likely to occur with more residents there than currently that being zone manufacturing as it is. Because this has been approved by both City Department, Development Commission, and the Far South Side Area Commission, I feel comfortable with this moving forward at this time, unless any of my colleagues have any questions or comments at this time. Seeing none, I would move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 2017-2023 to rezone 304 Fornoff Road being 2.01 plus acres located in the northeast corner of Fornoff Road and South High Street from N Manufacturing District to AR1 Apartment Residential District. And that because NRP Properties LLC, care of Dave Perry Agent, proposed use of mixed-use development. City's Department recommendations approval. Development Commission's recommendations approval. Far South Side Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Next, we have ordinance 2046-2023 to rezone 3245 Morris Road, being 1.98 plus acres located in the south side of Morris Road, 130 plus feet west of Dunbridge Street from C4 Commercial Plan Commercial District to LC4 Limited Commercial District and AR12 Apartment Residential District to AR1 Apartment Residential District. And the applicant is Community Housing Network, care of Dave Perry, agent. Proposed use a multi-unit residential development. City's Department recommendation is approval. Development Commission's recommendation is approval. Northeast Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, we have ordinance 2049-2023 to rezone 3440 West Broad Street, being 1.20 plus acres located on the northwest side of West Broad Street, 475 plus feet east of North Wilson Road from C4 Commercial District to M Manufacturing District. The applicant is Grant Avenue Partners, LTD, care of Donald Plank, attorney. Proposed use of a vehicle storage and wholesaling. City's Department recommendation is approval. Development Commission recommendation is approval. Greater Hilltop Area Commission recommendation is also approval. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, we have ordinance 2055-2023 to rezone 5860 Roche Drive, being 2.48 plus acres located on the east side of Roche Drive, 160 plus feet north of Covington Road from C4 Commercial District to ARO Apartment Office District. The applicant is Natural Church Residences, care of Matthew Burline, attorney. Proposed use is a multi-unit residential development. City's Department recommendation is approval. The Development Commission's recommendation is approval. Northland Community Council's recommendation is also approval. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. We will move into the council variances portion of the agenda. We have first 1953-2023 to grant a variance of provisions of sections 3356.03 C4 permitted uses, 3361.02 permitted use of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 6080 East Main Street to permit accessory storage in the C4 Commercial District. The applicant is Trustees Main 270 LLC, care of Dustin Doherty, agent. Proposed use is accessory storage. City's Department recommendation is approval. Far East Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
The next move to adopt the findings of staff is the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, we have ordinance 2018-2023 to grant a variance of provisions of section 3333.02 AR12, ARLD, AR1 apartment residential district uses 3312.49C, minimum number of parking spaces required 3321.05 A1, vision clearance 3333.18 C2, building lines, and 3333.255 perimeter yard of the Columbus City Codes for the property located at 30 and 103 Fornoff Road to permit a mixed use and multi-unit residential development with reduced development standards of the AR1 apartment residential district. The applicant is NRP Properties LLC, care of Dave Perry, agent. Proposed use is a mixed use and multi-unit residential development. City's Department recommendation is approval. Far South Side Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
I next move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
I next move to amend as submitted to the clerk.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Amend it.
And finally, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, we have ordinance 2047-2023 to grant a variance of provisions of section 3312.49C, minimum number of parking spaces required, and 3333.16 fronting of the Columbus City Codes to the property located at 3246 Morris Road to permit reduced development standards for a multi-unit residential development in the AR1 apartment residential district. The applicant is Community Housing Network, care of Dave Perry, agent. Proposed use a multi-unit residential development. City's Department recommendation is approval. Northeast Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
I next move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, we have ordinance 2050-2023 to grant a variance provisions of section 3312.13B driveway, 3312.21A landscaping and screening, 3372.804AB setback requirements, 3372.807A landscaping and screening of the Columbus City Codes to the property located at 3440 West Broad Street to permit reduced development standards for vehicle storage and wholesaling and manufacturing district. The applicant is Grant Avenue Partners, LTD, care of Donald Plank Attorney. Proposed use of vehicle storage and wholesaling. The City's Department recommendation is approval. The Greater Hilltop Air Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
I next move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
Finally, move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 2054-2023 to grant a variance provisions of sections 3332.035 R3 Residential District, 3312.49C, minimum number of parking spaces required. The Columbus City Codes for property located at 260 Reeve Avenue, permit a shared living facility for 13 occupants with reduced parking in the R3 Residential District. The applicant is accompanying returning citizens and Hope, care of Wendy Tarr. Proposed use of a shared living facility. City's Department recommendation is approval. Columbus Southside Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
Next, move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
Finally, move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Next, we have ordinance 2056-2023 to grant a variance provisions of section 3312.49C, minimum number of parking spaces required. The Columbus City Codes for property located at 5860 Roche Drive to permit a reduced parking for multi-unit residential development in the ARO Apartment Residential District. The applicant is National Church Residences, care of Matthew Burline, attorney. Proposed use of a multi-unit residential development. City's recommendation is approval. Northland Community Council recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
I next move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Next, we have ordinance 1405-2021 to grant a variance provisions of section 3332.289, prohibited use and activities, and 3332.21D, two building lines of Columbus City Codes to the property located at 3351 Carl Road to permit shipping containers for accessory storage with a reduced building line in the R3 Residential District. The applicant is Gary Hartman. Proposed use of a shipping container for accessory storage. City's Department recommendation is disapproval. The North Linden Area Commission's original recommendation was disapproval in April of 2021. Since then, the applicant has gone back to the commission and received approval in January of 2022. This ordinance was tabled indefinitely by then zoning chair Tyson on November 15th, 2021. Due to the current disapproval from the city, we will now hear a presentation from city staff. Mr. Dietrich, floor is yours.
Chair Dorans, President Harden, members of council, the lot is developed with a single unit dwelling and a detached garage in the R3 residential district. There is one existing shipping container adjacent to the garage for which a zoning code violation was issued in September of 2020. The applicant proposes to legitimize existing conditions for the containers to be used for accessory storage. A council variance is necessary to allow the use of salvaged shipping containers for storage on a residential lot. Variances to reduce the required vision clearance for the driveway and reduce building lines along Urena Avenue from 10 feet to 5 feet for an 8-foot tall privacy fence and to 0 feet for the existing dwelling are included in the request. The site is located within the planning boundaries of the North Linden Neighborhood Plan Amendment, which recommends low to medium density residential land uses at this location. Staff does not support this request, noting that the use of shipping containers on a residential lot as accessory structures for the storage of personal property is not consistent with the residential character of the neighborhood. The zoning code was updated in June of 2022 to prohibit the use of shipping containers as accessory storage structures on residential lots, as they are industrial in nature and incompatible with the neighboring residential properties. Staff encourages the owner to instead utilize sheds or similar outbuildings which are permitted, and because they are more ordinarily appurtenant to a dwelling and more compatible within the neighborhood. The applicant has amended the original request from 2 unscreened shipping containers to 1 container. 1 has been removed, with the condition that an 8-foot tall fence and 5 trees shall be installed around the container to aid in screening it from adjacent public streets. City departments remain in disapproval even with the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Dietrich. I'm going to pause on questions for city staff at this point to allow Mr. Hartman to make a presentation. Mr. Hartman, because this is a variance, I have to swear you in. So if you want to raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, as you shall answer in the pains or penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Mr. Hartman, the floor is yours, sir.
The reason I like to keep these containers, it's a nice storage place, and I have about 8 locking devices I can put on it when I want to. This is why they are such good shipping containers. Mine's brand new, it's clean, and I think it adds value to my property. And I like it represents strength, and it's clean, and nothing on my property is dirty. And that's why I like to keep it. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. I want to ask if my colleagues have any questions for the applicant at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Just a quick question. Why did you select a shipping container and not a traditional shed?
I didn't hear you.
Why did you select a shipping container and not a traditional shed of some sort?
Because it was cheaper,
Okay.
and it's almost 1/8 material. It'll handle a small weapons fire, so it's very, very secure. And also people are using these to build homes, storage container homes, and it's a big thing coming up now. Because overseas, they have all these extra storage containers, and they're sending them back, and they're getting them cheap. And it's a good investment to get in something like that. I mean, it's just strength and it's cheap.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Remy?
Mr. Hartman, there were some conditions on the approval from the Area Commission. Is that correct? What were those? Were there some conditions on what the Area Commission was asking you to do with the container?
He was asking about the screening and fencing that you committed to doing. The screening and fencing that you had committed to doing with the Area Commission. Putting a fence up around, you had committed to the Area Commission, you're willing to put a fence up around?
About a fence?
Yes.
I called a place, and I asked about an 8-foot vinyl fence, and I got a price on it for about $4,500. It would just cover 2 sides. It'd be 8 foot, and that would cover the height of the container. And that's the only thing I think will look good. It would tie in, be right up against the garage. The garage is white, and it's white all the way around. It'd be a nice looking addition if I could do it, or if I can keep the container or whatever. But that's one thing I did call out, and it was about $4,500 for that vinyl fence at the time.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Actually, just a follow-up to that, to your response just now about the fence being $4,500 is the quote that you received?
Kind of get blurry.
No problem. I'm just following up on the response that you just provided. And the question is it is it easier at this point for you just to remove the shipping container than it is to continue to spend your time and money to adjust to what the city is requiring you to adjust to?
If I want to keep it,
Yes, sir.
I like to keep it. That's why I
Okay.
got it for there. That's why I got it.
So it is worth you spending, because this has been about a 2-year effort for you. It's been about 2 years?
I'd rather keep it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time from council members? Councilmember Brown?
Councilman Dorns, just a question. Wasn't there more than one container?
When this came before the body in 2021, there were 2 shipping containers on the property. Since then, one has been removed, and that was part of Mr. Hartman going back to the Area Commission. So there is one current on the property, which, again, based upon what we understand from the discussion with the Area Commission, he's committed to doing fencing and some landscaping if, in fact, we were to approve this. I want to check in with the department and see if I got any of that wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions for the department at this time?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair. This is complicated because obviously we have a homeowner who has made some concessions, has worked with the Area Commission, yet and still the department recommends a disapproval for this type of usage. You've stated it before, but could you state again why and what precedent it would set if we were to support this usage?
Sure. Yes, so city departments are unwilling to support this type of use in a residentially zoned property in fear of the precedent it might set with other property owners. It is in line with our zoning code update that was done last summer with ordinance 1501-2022 that was passed by this body on June 13th and went into effect on July 13th, 2022. That updated our code and basically prohibited shipping containers to be used as a accessory structure on a residentially zoned property. It does not prohibit, however, a shipping container to be used as like a building material for a building, but it rather prohibits them from being an accessory structure on a property that is residentially zoned.
Councilman Ramey?
You said as a building, building product, but if I want to use this as an ADU, you're saying it's excluded?
Well, the way it's worded is it's prohibiting it as an accessory structure. So if that's getting a certificate of occupancy, then it would probably be prohibited.
Chair.
Councilman?
So this one is incredibly complicated, as Council President Harden has alluded to. I am supportive, however, because in my mind, we are talking about our housing crisis in a very real way, recognizing that we will not be able to dig ourselves out of it if we only do what we've done in the past, which is focus on single families, multifamily, that we are going to have to explore other types of options. That's why this body is focusing on an accessory dwelling unit pilot. And I absolutely respect the department's decision and advisement, and so I don't take this very seriously, but I'm also recognizing that we are going to have to find other creative solutions to address our housing crisis, and that, as you've already indicated, it could very well be a shipping container. And so where I struggle is with someone having a shipping container utilizing as their primary residence, but then also saying you need to put a traditional shed in the back of that shipping container. So just thinking outside of the box, how we're going to creatively solve this crisis and meet residents where they are right now. This is a movement that we're seeing across the country, and so I just look forward to continuing to engage with the department and the chair as we reform the zoning code.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Ramey?
And just to be clear, previously when he had the container on the property, there was no code that dictated whether or not a shipping container was allowed, correct?
No, that's incorrect. They received a violation in September of 2020.
But there was nothing in the code about having a shipping container on the property, correct?
I don't believe that's correct, no.
So you just said that we added this in the zoning, in the zoning update. The two don't make sense.
Well, it was an update to the language. I believe it was making it clearer that the shipping container was prohibited.
I just remember in 2021, when this came up, the problem that I had with it then was there was nothing addressing shipping containers in the code. Am I missing something? Did I forget something?
I don't have the violation in front of me, so I don't know what the
Director?
actual site was.
Do you know?
Thank you, Councilmember. The code, the zoning code is not all inclusive in what is and is not, and in some cases, the director has to make a decision as to whether a certain item or a certain use is permitted in a certain zone. Great example are the use storm places. They're not listed in the code, but they are a manufacturing storage activity that the directors put in a manufacturing area as opposed to a commercial area. In this case, shipping containers resemble and look like and are typically used for storage of some sort of material. And that is, storage typically is in a manufacturing or an industrial area versus a residential neighborhood. So, and with the chair's allowance, I can address using them as a residential. So, Councilmember Favor, I know that that ADUs are going to be part of the solution to the housing and situation we have. The challenge with a single housing container or single shipping container is you cannot meet the state building codes formulas for living space with just a single shipping container. So any ADU that is made out of a shipping container is going to have at least two to meet the ratios that the state building code require. And so, anyhow, I just wanted to clarify that.
I want to say thanks to my colleagues, and certainly thanks to the departments for really drilling in on that. I do want to remind, so this is a variance, right? So the question before the body is that we're not expressing a policy preference. We like this, we don't like this. The question is, is there a hardship in front of us that the body determines based upon legally that we believe we should grant a variance based on that hardship. I think in this case, I certainly appreciate Mr. Hartman's willingness to work with the Area Commission otherwise, but there are other options on the table for him for a storage facility that would allow him to continue to store property at his residence. So when we think about, again, what is the question before the body is there a real hardship in this particular property that justifies granting the variance? In my opinion, there's not. And certainly in this instance, when we're questioning about what precedent we're setting for allow this, certainly there's a longer policy discussion I think is on display here tonight about the use of shipping containers as the building blocks for residences or otherwise. But when we're talking about placing them as a storage unit in a residential area, for me, I don't believe that qualifies as a hardship, which should grant a variance in this specific instance. I think there's a larger holistic policy discussion for this council to have over the coming days, months, and years. But for me, I unfortunately, I don't see that, and certainly understand the applicant has been through a lot to get here today, but there are other options that are on the table, and therefore I don't believe that this would be a hardship. So before I ask for a vote, I just want to pause and see if any of my other colleagues have any questions or comments for either the department or the applicant at this point. Seeing none, I first move to take this table from the legislation from the table. By voice. By voice. Well,
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bankston? No. Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Yes. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
yes.
Ms. Favor?
No.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
President Harden?
No. Yes, I apologize. removed from the table.
I next move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit, and I will be voting yes, by voice.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
No.
Mr. Remy?
No.
President Harden?
Yes.
Thank you. I next move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Is there a second? Clerk, please call the roll. By voice.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
No.
Mr. Remy? President Harden?
Yes.
Thank you. I next move to amend as submitted to the clerk.
Is there a second? Clerk, please call the roll. By voice.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
No.
Mr. Remy? President Harden?
Yes.
Thank you. I now move for passage by voice.
Is there a second? Clerk, please call the roll by voice.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
No.
Ms. Favor?
Yes.
Mr. Remy? President Harden?
No. Ordinance is defeated.
Thank you, Council President. That's all we have in tonight's agenda.
See no further business coming for zoning. Is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adjourn.
everybody don't stop, don't quit. Do it like this. Do it like this. Do it like this.
Reconvene. The next meeting to come before council, the next committee to come before council is the Health and Human Service Committee, or the House. Health and Human Service Committee chaired by Councilmember Favor. Councilmember.
Criminal Justice.
Criminal Justice Committee.
Thank you,
The floor
Council
is
President
yours.
Harden. Tonight in Criminal Justice and Judiciary, we have ordinance 2144, 20-2023, to authorize and direct the city attorney to pay the attorney's fees and costs in accordance with the opinion and order entered on May 1st, 2023, in the case of Melissa McFadden versus the City of Columbus and the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, case number 218 CV 544, to authorize a transfer within the general fund, to authorize the expenditure of the sum of $216,732.71, and to declare an emergency. Melissa McFadden is Melissa McFadden is employed as a police commander with the City of Columbus Department of Public Safety Division of Police. On June 4th, 2018, the plaintiff filed her complaint in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, in which she claimed she was discriminated against on the basis of her race and retaliated against for engaging in protected activity, both in violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Ohio Revised Code. The plaintiff also asserted that the City of Columbus violated her due process and equal protection rights because of her race. The court granted summary judgment to the City of Columbus and dismissed plaintiff's due process claim. The remaining claims were tried to a jury in June 2022. On June 13, 2022, the jury entered a verdict against the City of Columbus and found that the city discriminated and retaliated against the plaintiff and awarded her $1 for each count. Post-trial, plaintiff filed a bill of costs and a motion for attorney fees. On May 1st, 2023, the court granted plaintiff's motion and ordered the city to pay $188,768.50 in attorney fees, $12,989.63 in expert costs, and $14,974.58 in its bill of costs, totaling a sum of $216,732.71. We are joined tonight by Chief Counsel Laura Baker Morrish. Chief Counsel, do you have any additional remarks you'd like to make at this time?
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. No, I have nothing addition to add. That was a fairly good rendition of the procedural steps in this case.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments for Chief Counsel by my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you. May I move on to Health and Human Services? Tonight in Health and Human Services, we have Ordinance 1825-2023 to authorize a transfer of $4,550,000 from the Object Class 3 to Object Class 5 in the Department of Development's 2023 General Fund budget, to authorize the Director of the Department of Development to enter into a grant agreement with numerous social service agencies for Year 2 of the Department's Elevate 1.0 program to support and increase the organizational capacity of nonprofit organizations that experience revenue losses such as canceled fundraising events, decreases in donor support, and increased expenditures such as PPE, virtual meeting licenses, and related hardware caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, to authorize the expenditure of up to $4,550,000 of general fund monies, to authorize an agreement start date of July 1st, 2023, to authorize payment for reasonable food and non-alcoholic beverages for participants of programs included in the grant agreements, and to authorize advancement of funds on a predetermined schedule during the term of the agreement. This legislation will award a total of $4,550,000 in grant money to 44 social services agencies located in Columbus as part of the Elevate 1.0 grant program. The Elevate 1.0 grant program arose out of the funding received through the American Rescue Plan Act with the goal to support and increase the organizational capacity of nonprofit organizations that experience revenue losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. 2022 was the first year of the 3-year Elevate 1.0 program, with the grants awarded under this legislation being known as Elevate 1.0 Year 2. 48 community agencies were recommended for the $5 million in available funding, with 44 included in this ordinance. I am proud that our city has prioritized strengthening families by investing $5 million of City of Columbus ARPA funds to increase the organizational capacity of nonprofit organizations tackling homelessness, infant mortality rates, and increasing housing stability for immigrant and refugee households. These focus areas are critical to ensuring a prosperous future for all Columbus families. The reality is that the pandemic has and will continue to have a major impact on the health and well-being of many vulnerable groups in our city, and the future of our city depends on ensuring all residents have the means and opportunity to thrive in safe and stable environments. Director Stevens, do you have anything you'd like to add at this time?
Thank you, Chair Favor. This is a second year of a 3-year commitment to build capacity of our human services. I do want to thank Council for their support of this work and the fact that we have doubled our human service funding from $5 to $10 million.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Director Stevens by my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bankston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
Yes.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
President Harden?
Wonderful. Thank you. Tonight, we have ordinance 1993-2023 to authorize the Executive Director of Celebrate One to enter into grant-funded service contract with Physicians Care Connection up to $347,772 for housing administration services, to modify existing nonprofit service contract dollar amounts with the Homeless Families Foundation, Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, Barbara Pop Associations, and AGC Solutions to realign COHHIO, Ohio Department of Health funding, to waive the competitive bidding requirements of the Columbus City Code and to declare an emergency. Healthy Beginnings at Home 2.0 was a program pursued in collaboration between the Ohio Department of Health and the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio, with the goal to reduce the infant mortality of high-risk pregnancy women by providing affordable housing intervention to those living in unstable housing. This program provides rental assistance, housing stabilization services, as well as prenatal and postnatal support to promote the health of a mother and her family as early as possible in pregnancy and to minimize the impact of unstable housing on pregnant women living in the Celebrate One high-risk target zip codes within Columbus. The Office of Celebrate One was awarded a housing assistance to improve birth and child outcomes grant from the Healthy Beginnings at Home 2.0 in April 2022. The original grant acceptance and sub-grant service contracts were legislated with Ordinance 2122-2022, and it included the authorization of 4 contracts, 2 with Housing Administration Services and 2 with project managers. This legislation modifies all 4 contracts to better align the existing funding, and it also adds a 5th contract, Physicians Care Connection, for a new vendor to assume the work of one of the original housing providers, the Homeless Families Foundation, which is leaving the project. This contract modification ordinance relates only to funding received from Healthy Beginnings at Home 2.0 and does not affect the emergency rental assistance dollars. We do have a new Celebrate One director. Let me allow you the opportunity to provide any additional remarks that you might see fit at this time. And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Favor. I would like to add that this is a no-cost ordinance. It's a realignment of existing funds to support our new provider that we are bringing on to support the 29 families that we have enrolled in this project. We are committed to making sure that these folks my apologies. It is, oh, that is much different. Thank you very much. It is our commitment to the original enrollees, the 29 families that we committed to serve, that we bring this ordinance to you today to make sure that we can fulfill our commitment to them with a new provider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are incredibly excited to have you on board. And if there are no questions or comments at this time, I'd move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Favor, Remy, President Harden.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council President. Tonight I have one ordinance in public safety. It's Ordinance 1830-2023 to authorize the mayor of the city of Columbus to accept a sub-grantee award through the fiscal year 22 Justice Assistant Grant Program from the Bureau of Justice Assistance via the Franklin County Office of Justice Policy and Programs to purchase equipment for the Crime Lab, to authorize an appropriation of $106,000 from the unappropriated balance of the General Government Grant Fund to the Division of Police to cover the costs associated with the fiscal year 22 Justice Assistant Grant. The City of Columbus has been awarded a federal fiscal year 2022 Justice Assistant Grant award from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office of Justice Programs. The JAG program provides funding to allow states and local governments to support a broad range of activities to prevent and control crime and improve the criminal justice system. The JAG Award will provide funds for the Columbus Division of Police Drug Identification Section of the Crime Lab to purchase additional equipment. Items being purchased include gas, chromatograph, mass spectrometer systems, infrared attenuated total reflectance systems that are employed daily to meet case demands. The city will act as subgrantee to the Franklin County Office of Justice Policy and Programs. Therefore, the mayor is required to sign a subgrantee award on behalf of the city. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Yeah, there's a whole lot. I can pass it over to the director. If there's no questions or comments, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass.
Thank you. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final committee to come before council is the Finance Committee. We have one ordinance in the committee, ordinance 1919-2023, to authorize the city auditor to modify the existing contract with Ceridian HCM, Inc. for the renewal of the Dayforce software subscription support hardware and services, and to authorize the expenditure of $1,324,800 from the Department of Technology operating fund, and to authorize expenditure of $70,000 from the Employee Benefits Fund. This legislation renews the city's contract with Dayforce Software, the city's workforce management system. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, I move for passage. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Pass. See no further business to come before council. Is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Meeting is adjourned.